2024 at 8:30 a.m.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Ostergren.
Here.
Wolfson.
Here.
Russo.
Here.
Milburn.
Here.
Spencer.
Here. Approval of the agenda. Before we approve the agenda, we need to have a motion to waive the confidentiality of the legal opinion to be added in.
So moved.
Discussion? And then also we will be moving number 7, motions and resolutions, to number 5 before public comment.
Or we can just make a motion.
Okay.
to do that
I'm sorry, what was
instead
that,
of moving
darling?
the motion.
We have to, you know where it says motions and resolutions?
Mhm.
We'll just move that up because we need that before Stacy speaks. Because we're waiving the confidentiality.
Okay.
Okay. So we're making a motion to waive the confidentiality of the legal opinion
When are we gonna have public comment on that?
right after this. Yep. So, I make a motion that we waive the confidentiality of the legal opinion.
First, we have to do a vote on the agenda.
Oh, I thought we already did that. I'm sorry.
You have a motion in a second. You don't
Okay.
have a
Oh, okay.
Russo.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Spencer.
Yes,
Wolfson.
Yes.
Ostergren.
Yes.
Motion carried. Okay, now.
so we can make a motion to waive the confidentiality of the legal opinion.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ostergren.
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Wolfson.
Yes.
Spencer.
Yes.
Russo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Austin Straczynski, Houghton Lake. The current summer leak level for Houghton Lake was originally established in 1926. We all know that. It's almost making it 100 years old. A lot of stuff can happen over those 100 years. During those last 100 years, sand was pumped from the lake bottom, put on the shorelines. That was all swampland at the time. Many, if not all, the canals weren't even established back then when it was illegal or when it was established. The current dam wasn't even built until 1940, making it, again, 14 years after we established this level on Houghton Lake. The outboard motor, that wasn't even in production until 1933, 7 years after we established the level. So as you can see, many things can and have happened to our lake over this last 100 years. Yet, never was the lake level revised or looked at. And the reason I believe it was never revised or changed is that nobody cared or was too concerned that we maintained it exactly at that level. The historical data from the USGA site, which goes back 17 years, shows that the lake level on Houghton Lake constantly fluctuated a foot below and 2 feet above the legal level during that 17 years. That's the highs, that's the lows. With an average of 6.8 above, or 6 to 8 inches above. All this great historical data proves that the court order from 1926 was never maintained, but in fact, it was really maintained at 6 to 8 inches above the legal level. During these past 2 years, but in 2022, a change happened due to a Higgins Lake lawsuit. And our lake had to be maintained exactly at the 8.1 legal level. And during these past 2 years, we found out that this legal level was too low for most to enjoy the lake during the summer period. The signed petitions we submitted to you a month ago show and prove this. We are asking you, the Board of Commissioners, to hear our voice and make a change to return the water levels back to Houghton Lake to what they've been maintained at for the past 30 to 40 years. I fully understand that this predicament that we find ourselves in from the 2022 court ruling is no fault of yours, but it is you guys, the Board of Commissioners, that hold the power to make the change to return Houghton Lake back to the levels that it used to be and the way it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Come on up and state your name.
Kurt Copel, 321 Waterway Court, Houghton Lake. So as the gentleman before talked about the history of Houghton Lake and when the lake levels were set, and also how for the past 40 years that the lake levels has been banked in order to have enough water in Houghton Lake for everybody to enjoy. So as he also stated, nowadays, for owners that live on Houghton Lake, the canal, I live on a canal, the level is so low that you just cannot get your boats out like what you've been used to. And it's very frustrating to have this piece of property, live on Houghton Lake, and not be able to enjoy it as we have been for the last, say, 40 years. And so I am asking the board to take into consideration that for the last 40 years, Houghton Lake has been banking water, and I would like to see the commissioners approve this petition, take it forward, and agree that something needs to be done. We need to go forward with this, not just do anything or table it, but I'd like to see something done today to move forward so that we can enjoy Houghton Lake like we have for the last 40 years and make a decision on the lake level. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, state your name.
Good morning. My name is Linnell Ash. I live on Houghton Lake. I'm an implant from Colorado. I've been here for 11 years. And a little bit that I've learned about that this entire community is all based around this lake. And I cannot believe how anyone who's in charge has been asleep at the wheel. There are businesses that are closing. This isn't a popular lake. People aren't coming up here anymore because it's too darn shallow. I had a boat that I couldn't even get out of the water last year. It took 4 other couples to come help me get the boat out. So it's a high priority item. And I just implore all of you to take charge. It is a very high priority. And shame on all of you for sleeping through this. I hope you can get it taken care of.
Any other public? Yes.
First of all, good morning, and thank you for what you do. I mean, I know it's not an easy situation to be in front of a lot of people that are confrontational, right? But what I'm going to ask is that you consider the investment that people have made and the significant parts of their net worth that are tied up in their dream lake homes. Over 4,000 properties around this lake are, in my opinion, suffering, right? I can't put my sea-doos in the water because I can't get my hoist low enough to actually float them, right? We had to take our boat out a month early because I live on a particularly shallow part of the lake in the northeast shore. I had to take it out early because I was afraid I could not get it out. Right now, I have a 6-foot sandbar in front of my seawall that is completely filled with the weeds that are being ripped out of the lake because of the low lake level and the high winds. Now, it's not just the people that are investing on the expectation when we bought these places that was the normal lake level, right? We all were convinced that was normal. This new normal isn't what we bought into, right? And our property values will suffer as a result if we don't do something about it. Most importantly, this area is a services-based economy. We don't produce a lot here. The people that work in the businesses, the waitresses, the cooks, the people that work in the stores, right? They're dependent on an economy that brings people to the lake. The main attraction is the lake. If the lake won't support what people want to do, people won't come. And ultimately, the people that will pay the price are the people that live here, as well as now us. Most of us are downstaters who own a second home, but there are many people that live on the lake and retired here, and I'll be retiring here next year. That's my plan. Now I'm looking at it and saying, what am I going to do? Right? If I can't enjoy the lake the way I intended to enjoy it, and we've been here we've owned since 1976, but I've been here all 64 years of my life, right? And so, I mean, everybody built their plans and their dreams around the level of the lake. It's a shallow lake to begin with. It's very sensitive to what happens here. So I just ask for your consideration that it's bigger than just the people that own the lake. It's the people that live here that ultimately will suffer. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. What was your name, sir? What was your name?
Any other public comment? Come on up and state your name.
Danny Miller. Been a longtime resident as well. And I just want to say I concur with his statement. Also, to add on to it, we're heavily taxed as well because we live on the lake. And we just had a special assessment go through that. We're going to have to take care of the lake, and the state owns the water, but we own the property around it. And I think that should have a bearing on, the decision here as well.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Come on up. State your name.
My name is Joe Kramer. I'm at 9201 East Houghton Lake Drive. First of all, thank you for calling the special meeting. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to listen to us and look forward instead of backwards. Secondly, I want to publicly thank Dustin for his leadership in getting us to this point. I'm a big believer in the common sense approach, and I think that the comments I made earlier, speaking about the economic impact, the common sense of drifting toward the legal lake level as you go through the summer, as Mother Nature takes her course, has worked well for a long, long time. I think the petition asks you to consider that, and at the same time allow the science to come into play that maybe looks down the road a little bit and make some adjustments to that 8.1 number. So appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you. Come on up.
Good morning. Just a question. There's been some information around that says that the opinion of the commissioners is that the law that says you can bank water is not in effect because it's being challenged. I don't believe that's true, and I just want to establish the fact that as long as that law is on the books and hasn't been reversed, are you of the opinion you will bank water if it ever rains?
We can't answer questions.
You can't?
No, not in public comment. We can't.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Michael Blasky. Come on up. State your name.
Just taking a minute, not everyone here is in favor of increasing the lake level in Houghton Lake. I guess I believe we should be here talking about shoreline restoration, seawall removal, natural shoreline incentive. We should be talking about the restoration of the wild rice. We should be talking about the ecology of Houghton Lake, but instead, what we seem to be talking about all the time is boating. Bigger motors, bigger boats, Our water resource is far more than just a boating lake. Ranked as one of the foremost diver duck stopover spots. Wild rice and duck hunting used to be quite the thing. The fishery used to be superior. People from everywhere in the state, Indiana, would come to catch the fish in Houghton Lake. These things are dependent on a legal lake level. Wild rice, a protected species under Michigan law, needs a legal lake level to be reestablished. Shoreline features improve the fishery. I just think we're headed in the wrong direction. We should be talking about restoration and not increasing the lake level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Come on up. Please state your name.
Sherry Snow. We purchased our property in 2011 at a lake level that we thought was the lake level that we would be living with for our whole time here. And then over the past 2 years, when it went down, it was a shock because for 12 years, we've been living with the lake as we thought it was to be for the whole time we've been here. My husband and I retired, and it's not what we expected. We see things on Facebook of people's property that has sandbars in front of their seawalls, and it's just not what we all signed up for when we purchased our property here. Last year we had to try to take our boat out and put a sponge thing under it to try to get it off the hoist, and practically almost killed ourselves trying to get the sponge out from underneath the pontoon once we got it off the hoist. And it was horrible. I think our property values are suffering. My neighbor didn't even take their boat out last year because we're in such a shallow area. The businesses are suffering. And I think that based on the Senate Bill 662 that allows us to bank water, I think this commission does have the ability now, as of October 31st, to bring the water back to what we were all accustomed to. Yes, we should continue with the petition and change the legal lake level, but that might be a long process. And I think with your help, we can bank water like we had for the past 40 years and bring us back to what we've been accustomed to, and bring our lake back. So I urge you to help us, because we have over 2/3 of the lake owners, wanting a change. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay.
We have 3 on Zoom. The first one is Robert.
Good morning.
Can
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, good morning. My name is Bob Chahorsky, and I own a cottage at 10648 West Shore Drive. I'm here to express my support. There's no better evidence of petition than the previous 40 years of lake banking 6 to 8 inches of water for the summer, which according to the county occurred with. Concerns of flooding should be investigated, but this 40-year history is hard to ignore. The practice of banking water in the summer is what the community has been accustomed to for the lake levels. Community members have purchased property, docks, boats, and hoists based on the summer water levels of the past 40 years. The elimination of the historic banking practice on Houghton Lake was not initiated by a request of any property owner on Houghton Lake. It was the result of a court case on another lake. The property owners along Houghton Lake have spoken via the petition, and an overwhelming majority of us desire a return to the past practices of a higher lake level in the summer. Banking 6 to 8 inches of water can be done in the spring at a time when the Muskegon River is already high from the spring melt and won't miss the water. This bank water can then be used during the summer to maintain a more stable lake level at the historic levels we've been accustomed to, with a reasonable cushion for periods of drought and low water. The petition also calls for beginning the drawdown to the current winter legal lake level earlier in the fall, so that the winter levels can still be reached before winter storms and ice sets in. These are reasonable and practical approaches to managing the lake levels. I encourage the county to take the necessary steps to proceed with the requests in the petition. Thank you.
Next, we have Steve.
Hi, good morning. This is Steve Monson at 1242 Caroline Drive. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on this very important issue for this entire region. This lake is the lifeblood of this region. I think we all realize that, and we realize how important this topic is. I'd like to put a special thanks out to Dustin and Ida Trzynski for their efforts on behalf of all Houghton Lake landowners. I'd just like the commissioners to understand, and I think most of you do, but I want to state this for the public record. The vast majority of landowners are not asking for historical raise. We're really just basically wanting to return water level management to the way it's been done for the last 40 years. Next, we should not have to spend any taxpayer dollars on data. We have 40 years of data, as many have already indicated. Let's efficiently and effectively use that data to our advantage. In closing, I ask the county commissioners to push forward as quickly as possible with the overwhelming desire of Houghton Lake landowners. Your urgent efforts are much appreciated. Thank you.
And lastly, we have Lisa.
Hello. Hi, my name is Lisa Campbell. I've had a cottage on Houghton Lake for about 25 years. At 7425 East Houghton Lake Drive. I don't feel the need to reiterate what everybody else has says, but I just want to show my support for raising the lake level. I agree with pretty much everything else that the other people have said, so I don't feel like it needs to be said again. I appreciate your work on this, and I hope that you guys will prioritize this, because this past year we didn't even put our boat in the water because we couldn't get it on and off the hoist. And I am worried about the property taxes or property values going down if things aren't fixed. So that's all I need to say. I just appreciate everything. Thank you.
Houghton Lake petitions, legal opinion and how to move forward. Good morning.
I believe all the members of the board have one of the longer legal opinions I've written, 9 pages, to go through not only the legality of the petition, but the legal procedure with regard to a petition, and then my recommendations as to how to move forward, given, some of the time constraints that we have. So I'm sure the board has read this and knows more about Part 307 than you ever dreamed of when you were elected to become a member of the County Board of Commissioners. But because we have such a large amount of audience members present, I'm going to go through it very slow, very thoroughly, so that everyone gains an understanding. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. So it is my understanding that a petition has been received by the County Board of Commissioners purporting to represent 2/3 of the riparian owners on Houghton Lake, requesting a change to the lake level under Part 307. And the language of the property owner request is A, that the summer level be increased to the level that property owners have been accustomed to over the last 40 years, and B, that the current winter level be revised. So it is my understanding, after speaking with different members of the board, that you're asking my opinion as to what is possible under a petition, what is possible through the court, and then in terms of balancing the project that is just beginning to start with regard to the water control structure, and what is possible as in terms of an immediate relief to the property owners that you might see. So what I mean by that is the lake level control structure and the permitting and the final engineering for that, there's no way that's going to be possible before this year's summer, okay? That's going to take a year or two in the best case scenario. So what is possible under Part 307 in the meantime to be able to provide some relief requested under the petition, and then using that information to help craft the best possible permanent lake level and to ensure that whatever structure you build is able to deal with a change in the lake level order. So that's the purpose of the opinion. So, as this board is aware, the lake level was originally established in 1926 and then amended to include a winter and summer level in 1982. And in 2022, the court amended that 1982 order, but only to the extent to include a special assessment district, and to make a statement that's already law with regard to the need for permitting from Eagle. That was a requirement for Eagle to agree with the order, and that is the state of the law right now. So it's not any, it's just basically a restatement of what the law is currently. So the board has already approved an engineering contract with Prine and Newhoff to design a new water control structure. The design of that structure, I'm glad that this board is taking under consideration a petition or a revision to the lake level now, because it matters what the end order will be in the design of the structure. What I mean by that is if the court allows water banking and includes water banking or a different level, that will impact the design of the structure. As an example, right now, you have a manual maintenance of the structure or changing of stop logs, as an example, to move the water level. If the court and this board decides that water banking is important, then that needs to take into consideration rain events, wind events, etc. And so it may make more sense to have it take place not manually, but to be able to do that through the design of the structure automatically through updated technologies. So that makes a difference in how the water control structure is designed. If there's a change also in the actual lake level itself, for permitting purposes, we will want to know that or have a good idea of that in advance, because that may impact the ultimate design of the water control structure. So it is wise of this board to have all of these discussions before we build something, because it's going to impact that. One of the questions was asked was the sufficiency of the property owner petition to revise the lake level order. So with regard to that, it talks about 2/3 of the property owners signing that, and we have a petition that purports to have 2/3. My recommendation to the board would be to pass a resolution that is based on the petition and on the board's own motion to make revisions to the to the 1982 order. I believe that that is important for a couple of reasons. One, as much as attorneys like to litigate, it would be very costly and time consuming time consuming to litigate or have a challenge the sufficiency of the property owners. To ultimately do that, you would have to pull every deed of every property along the lake. And then it says, I believe, property owners, not proper. So you have to then balance property owners and properties. Properties change hands. There are divorces. There are deaths. You know, there are land contracts. There are all kinds of things that make getting a valid snapshot difficult and expensive. To defend against that, the board could simply say, and is allowable under Part 307 to say, on its own motion. So it's not dependent on the sufficiency of the signers of the petition to be able to do that. That can be something that the board took into consideration and acknowledges that in its motion, but also prevents you from any questions of challenging the petition itself. In my opinion, a petition is not even necessary in the first place to revise a lake level order. The county could have done that on its own motion. And in situations like Lake St. Helen, that may very well be the case, that you're going to petition to revise the lake level by removing potentially a winter level on its own motion and not based on a property owner petition. That is allowable under Part 307. So in order to defend against that, that would be my recommendation. I also think that it would be important for the board to do it on its own motion so that there could be no arguments that you have to follow the specifics of the petition in terms of a change in the winter level and in terms of any specificities with regard to the request, whatever accustomed to might mean. You don't want to get into litigation about that, or that that's what the petition says, so that's what this board or the court needs to be held to. As I just mentioned, there is going to be a balance of what the enumerated items that we'll go through in a minute that the court has to utilize to set a level, what Eagle will permit, because you have to meet both, and then what the property owners want, and what can be actually from an engineering perspective built, and how expensive that is. So you are juggling all these different things that need to be balanced to come to an end result, and you don't want to be forced into a corner with any specifics at this point because we don't have enough information to be able to get us there. So my recommendation would be choose to utilize the petition however you wish in terms of a resolution moving forward to petition the court, but also do it on this board's own motion if you wish to do that, to protect yourself from any challenges to the sufficiency of the petition signers and also to any specific language in the petition as to the request for relief. I believe, in Part D of the legal opinion, we recommend that a resolution take place to allow us to move forward to file a petition, and then again, continue to update the $10,000 spending. We have provided, I think to Jody yesterday, some draft petition language that allows for that, and I will go into more, I'll unpack the process a little bit more of how we recommend the board consider moving forward, but a resolution is necessary. You have also asked me about the requirement for a $10,000 deposit before moving forward. 307 does state that a county board may require a cash deposit from petitioners sufficient to cover the cost of an actual preliminary study. That is not, two things about that. One, it is not a requirement. And number two, in my opinion, I believe that is for a situation where you're looking at the development of a lake level in its first instance and not in a situation where you already have an established lake level and specifically an established lake level district. So in that situation, I have seen that used where, let's say you have another lake in Roscommon County that doesn't have a lake level, And maybe it's a situation where it's a pothole lake and there's no outlet, or they're wanting an augmentation well, etc. And you're not sure if it's even feasible. So you would take the $10,000 to protect the county general fund from spending those monies to see if it's feasible. If it's not, and no lake level is established, then that money is used to pay for the study, etc. If it is, and then the lake level is ultimately established and a district is established, then those funds are reimbursed to the property owners that paid the deposit. In this situation, we already have a lake level, we already have a district, so it would just be a paperwork scenario that I think your people would find very difficult to navigate in terms of taking money and then releasing that money, because we already have a district established. So for that reason, we do not recommend, of course, this board can do whatever it chooses to do, but we do not recommend that a petition that a deposit be taken given the specific circumstances, especially in the event that the board decides to move forward on its own. With regard to Eagle permitting, as you are aware, permits will be required for the new water control structure, and Eagle will also be involved in having a say as to what any revisions are to the 1982 order. So it is my recommendation that we coordinate with Eagle immediately so that there are no surprises at the end in terms of what any possible recommendations are from the engineers, what the wishes are of the board, and then what is possible to permit, so that we don't have to get a permit. The last thing you want to do is go in to a courtroom having Eagle against you on something and then having to go back and figure that out. It is much more expedient and cost efficient to work with them from the very beginning, and I recommend that we do so. With regard to the lake level and the lake level changes, I'm going to talk about that at the same time as I talk about the water banking. So I have the opinion, it is my personal opinion, that the legislative changes that were passed, that are not in effect yet, by the way, they will most likely not be in effect until March. It's 90 days after the last day of the legislature, not immediate effect, are not for situations where you are purposely water banking money or water banking water in the spring. That is purposeful. The variation language that the legislature included is for natural events and not something that you're going to be doing year after year after year as part of your water management strategy. All is not lost in terms of water banking, though, because I have successfully in other lake level orders worked with Eagle to include the opportunity to water bank right in the lake level order. We have done that as recently as this year. So it is possible to petition and successfully petition the court to allow water banking in an order. And if that's the board's wish and the engineers can come up with a recommendation for that, that is very possible. And in the proposed resolution that we have drafted, we have talked about the possibility of water banking with regard to that. Now, in terms of the seasonal levels, we would look at, there can be changes to the winter and summer level, and we would want to look at when that, so there's a difference between when you start doing that and when it ends, and that would probably be something that needs to be tied to the water banking and if there's going to be any change in the permanent level. So that is something certainly allowable under the petition, but may not be ready to be decided yet because there are too many other variables involved to make that determination at this time. As you are aware, and I specifically listed in the legal opinion, there are many items that a court must take into consideration when making a revision to the lake level. And that includes many of the items that you heard during the public comment period, including the past lake levels and information with regard to that, any flooding, any impacts to the natural resources, the hydrology of the watershed, etc. And so it is a very good thing that you have a significant amount of lake level information that has been compiled over the years, but that alone is not sufficient without further engineering information to be able to go to the court and make the court's job easier as to what are the possibilities, taking all of these different items into consideration. And for the audience, I'm going to read what those are, and these are enumerated in Part 307. And the court's considerations include past lake levels, including the ordinary high water mark and seasonal fluctuations, the location of septic tanks, drain fields, sea walls, docks, and other pertinent physical features, government surveys and reports, the hydrology of the watershed, downstream flow requirements and impacts on downstream riparians, fisheries and wildlife habitat protection and enhancement, upstream drainage, rights of riparians, testimony and evidence offered by all interested parties, and then other pertinent facts and circumstances. We also, so in my opinion, you're going to want, in addition to the information that we have in terms of historical lake levels, you are also going to want an modeling to take place as to how different lake levels impact the various uses by property owners. Meaning, how does a lake level, if it's low, impact docks? How does a lake level, if it's high, impact flooding or other natural resource impacts? And so then we have that information to show the court and able to better and successfully balance all of the differing interests around the lake. When we are doing the petition, and as we told this board and we let all the property owners know, we have kept track. We also recommend that there's some more updates to the district boundaries. So we were hoping on all three lakes that when we went to court, we would have all the information we need to have an accurate boundary. Sometimes people only pay attention when they get the notice in the mail to their assessment amount. And so for each of the lakes, we got information after the court hearing itself that there may be information that needs to be changed. And so as we promised this board, we have kept track of that. And there are a few minor items that while we're doing this other opening the order up, that we can make some slight revisions to the boundaries based on the information that we received after the fact. So I'm going to kind of put the rest of this together and talk about what I think this board should do, and then come back and unpack some of the other parts. So we have an unbelievably complicated situation in terms of differing opinions from lake owners. You have a complex hydrology of the lake, and then you have a lake level order that doesn't include the water banking that you've been doing for the past number of years. So to cut the story short, my recommendation is that you do some engineering immediately to take to the court before this summer so that we can have some temporary revisions to the lake level order to allow for some relief to property owners while we're doing the rest of the engineering studies and permitting to get us to a permanent order. What that means is that the engineers would come up with a model that shows, based on the information we have, for a temporary period of time, the engineers make the following recommendations as to water banking. So it might be a conservative number. I'm going to make a number up. So no one, this is a number made up. Don't go to breakfast after this and say, this is what they're saying. I'm doing this for illustration only. Okay. Let's say the engineers can show that water banking of 4 inches and the modeling shows that that's going to provide some relief in a temporary basis for property owners this year and it shows that it's not going to have any structural flooding, etc. And then tie that to an operation and maintenance manual that your delegated authority can follow to ensure that we meet that temporary order for water banking. So that means the engineers would work with the delegated authority to have a written manual for the current water control structure you have, how to get it up to the water banking, and then what happens if we have a rain event while we're banking, what happens if we have a wind event while we're banking, to be able to operate this current structure that we have until we can get to a permanent order and a permanent structure. That might be automated instead of manual. This will serve a couple of things. One, it'll ensure that you allow for some of the water banking without being in violation of the order because you'll have a temporary order. Two, it will give immediate relief to those who are asking for it. And three, and I think this is also very important, it will give the engineers some data. Now that you have some data to look at while they're going through this process to help see where it makes sense. And so I suggest that the board consider, and that's what our petition, our resolution is drafted, to allow us to work with the engineers. And I'll talk about the public input and transparency items in the meantime, to be able to go to court before this spring to get a temporary order for some amount of water banking to allow to happen, and perhaps whatever the engineers come up with that you agree upon and that Eagle agrees upon in a temporary basis until we can do more stringent engineering, surveys, permitting, etc., to be able to set that final level. I recommend a number of different things to get us from here to perhaps in April. One, engineering to show the court what would happen in a water banking situation in terms of how low is too low for the docks, how high is too high for the flooding concerns, to give us a conservative range to work with at a temporary level. And then I think it would be important to provide some assurance to property owners that it includes a timeline to get us to a permanent order. So what that means is, the last thing I want to have happen to this board is you set a temporary order and then property owners accuse you of having a temporary order that's going to be in place for the next 20 years, when that's not the intent of the board. And to show and provide some reassurance to your property owners that that is indeed temporary, because we are including some time frames within it that engineering and so forth will occur to report back to the board, or to have that ultimate change to the order to make it not, it might end up being the very exact same thing that's in the temporary, but make it permanent. To get there, we would recommend an immediate contract with the engineers to do the modeling, that the Lake Advisory Board that was appointed by this Board of Commissioners meet as soon as possible and continue to meet to provide input to the delegated authority in this board as to how that process should take place. And then we also recommend that you have a public hearing, both in person and perhaps through Zoom, to provide property owner input before we get to the court hearing, so that there's as much information as available to the property owners, being transparent in the process. And then, of course, provide updates and copies of the report on the Roscommon County Lake Levels website, so that everybody understands what's going on every step of the way. So I think that it is also important to tie the temporary order, as I mentioned, to an operation and maintenance manual, so that the engineers provide guidance to the delegated authority as to operate the current structure and the permanent structure so that, and that manual is published so that it is extremely transparent as to how this all will be taking place. And that, again, that not only the Lake Advisory Board be involved in all those steps, and then minutes and summaries of those meetings be put on the website, and then also a public hearing for everyone before we go to court to make the court hearing as efficient as possible. So in the legal opinion, I provided some steps and timeline. And when you read that, you probably went, oh boy, because there's a lot of November 2024 steps included in that, which would include a resolution to allow action on the petition, 2, an engineering study to assist us with the information regarding what possible steps can be taken in the interim, and what that modeling looks like. 3, a meeting with Eagle to ensure that they are aware of, they have to approve the water banking, and to make sure that this is going to be acceptable and what would be allowed with regard to that. 4, that the advisory board meet as soon as possible to go through this concept, this timeline, this plan, and that all of that information be available on the website to keep property owners informed. I know this board meets regularly to provide information on the lake levels, and so that way, so there would be information in meetings, information on the website, and information provided to the board to give property owners as much transparency as possible. To have the engineers move as quick as humanly possible so that we could be prepared for an in-person meeting in time before we file the petition, so that the board is comfortable based on hearing information from the property owners, what that petition would look like, and then the filing of the petition in February. As this board is aware, the court has a heavy schedule, and so to find time on its docket to hear a petition like this takes some time, months in some instances. And so I would want to file by no later than February. If I had my druthers, we would do it as soon as possible. So that action, so we would have a hearing perhaps in April, and that would give us time to start the water banking if the board wanted to, if it was allowed through the court order, and if Eagle agreed to it. If we don't act now, we're not going to be able to have all that happen in time for action to be taken yet this spring. That was a lot. So I am open to any questions that the board may have about the particulars.
Yes, I have. Fact, and when you went through everything, there were so many topics that I found questionable. I couldn't even write them all down. If I could see that recording, go through them with you one at a time, that would be nice.
I think you have the legal opinion in front of you, so we could.
I understand. You added quite a bit though too, off the legal opinion. So there's some issues we need to decide as a commission before we move forward on this. Last year, in several meetings, we as commissioners agreed that we were not going to petition the courts for a legal level to change. I hope everybody remembers that. Additionally, a lot of other things happen. We've been provided, petitions, and I think we need to go through the process of following through on that, because that's what we said that we would do back in our resolution that I'm going to get back to here in a second. Changing the legal levels, we need to follow through with what we said we would do. I think we need to protect ourselves from potential litigation. I believe that Ms. Hissong's legal opinion will lead to more litigation, not less. And I really wonder where this legal opinion was 2 years ago when we began this whole process with Higgins Lake. Nothing was ever said about water banking on Higgins Lake because it was determined to be illegal. Okay. We need to validate the petitions, and that's the way we need to move forward, as opposed to going forward ourselves and opening this commission up for more legal proceedings. We promised that we wouldn't do that last year in several different meetings. We promised that we wouldn't do that. And back in March of 2019, we passed a resolution. I'm going to read that resolution that we passed. Requirements to petition change to lake level control structures and legal levels resolution. You may not be aware of this. Are you aware of this resolution that we passed?
I'm not sure which resolution you're referring
It's the resolution that led to all the litigation on Higgins Lake, just so everybody knows. Whereas, as outlined under Part 307, inland lake levels of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994 PA 451 is amended. The act, lake levels were established for Higgins Lake, Houghton Lake, and Lake St. Helen to protect the public health, welfare, and safety for the conservation of natural resources. And whereas the Roscommon County Board of Commissioners, as required by the act, is the delegated authority of the county in regards to the lake level and lake level control structure maintenance. And whereas MCL 324-30702 provides that the county board of commissioners in which an inland lake is located may, upon the board's own motion, or shall within 45 days following the receipt of a petition of the board of 2/3 of the owners of the lands abutting the inland lake, initiate action to take the necessary steps to cause to be determined the normal level of an inland lake. And whereas Roscommon County Board of Commissioners believes usage and home values are best preserved and represented by obtaining a majority opinion of those landowners outlined in the act as being needed to petition for legal lake levels. And whereas all of that up to this point in time is true. Very, very true. That's everything that we should do. Whereas MCL 324-307-703 further provides that the County Board of Commissioners may require a cash payment from the petitioners sufficient to cover the actual preliminary study cost or $10,000, whichever is less. Now here's the paragraph. It is illegal. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Roscommon County Board of Commissioners shall require a petition of 2/3 of the owners of the land abutting the lake prior to considering any public request to initiate any change is to the existing lake level control structures and or legal lake levels of Higgins Lake, Houghton Lake, and Lake St. Helen. Be it further resolved that before a preliminary study is conducted, the Roscommon County Board of Commissioners will require a cash payment from the petitioner sufficient to cover the actual preliminary study costs or $10,000, whichever is less. Now, what that means is this resolution totally turned the statute on its head. In other words, we required all that before we were going to maintain the legal lake levels. That's what brought on the litigation of Higgins Lake, which was overturned by the local circuit court and the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. It was an illegal provision. I'd like to remind the commission that when this lawsuit was filed, it was later appealed to the Michigan Court of Appeals, upheld by the Michigan Supreme Court, as instructed by the county that they had a duty to. Everybody here, I feel your pain. We've been going through this up on Higgins Lake for the last 20 years. Right now, Higgins Lake is over 10 inches below its legal level. Maybe it's 11 inches. I think we need to make a change to Houghton Lake, but we need to do it right. We need to do it properly. So we're not on the line as commissioners and as this commission to open ourselves up for more legal proceedings, which of course runs up more legal fees for Ms. Hissong's firm. And as I said before, I think the way she wants to do it is going to end up being more costly to us in additional legal fees. So I think we need to be able to take all of these petitions, go through the proper process, and do it that way rather than go through a real hurried up situation where we expose ourselves. Anyway, the resolution, this resolution that I just read back in March of 2019, that we passed back as a commission back in 2019, I believe was illegal. I think we need to repeal this resolution. Number one, it needs to be repealed. So we're not violating our own resolution. We also need to stand by our word that we gave as a commission last year, not follow through. And I'm sure Ms. Hissong probably did not know that we had agreed as a commission that we weren't going to seek a legal lake level change. And we haven't done that. So that's my comment. And I think in the past, and I'm going to say this, Mrs. Song isn't going to like this, okay? But she has misled this commission several times in the past, several times. And I think I don't have to point them out, and she knows what they are. And we need to take her opinion with a grain of salt. And it's, she said just earlier, a very misleading statement. She says that we as commissioners can change the legal lake level. We can't do that. It has to go through the proper process. And you said that. And that's another misleading statement. The problem here is that one of our commissioners in the past 15, 20 years has illegally maintained the legal level on Houghton Lake when it should have been, when they should have been looking into getting a new dam and fixing the problem then. Instead, it was illegally maintained at way over the legal level, and all this should have been happening, should have been taken care of years ago. And I really, like I said, I feel all your pain on Houghton Lake. We've been suffering through the same thing for 20 years. You've been suffering through for the last 2 years. We've been suffering through the same thing on Higgins Lake for the last 20 years. The commission hasn't done its job, and the courts have said that they haven't done their job. So I think we need to move forward on getting this resolved on Houghton Lake, but we need to do it properly. We need to do it legally, and we need to do it as we said as a board we would do. And that's my comments.
Any other comments? Yes.
Surprisingly, I disagree with Mr. Ostergan. I hear the people, the 2/3, in my opinion, is reasonable. I don't think we have to go back and review the 2/3 property owners. I'm very comfortable with Ms. Hissong's recommendations. That's how I'll vote in the future. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm very comfortable. Patient. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have some issues with this. First of all, there's 2 issues here, apparently, maybe 3.
Do me a favor, Rex, my hearing's terrible. Speak up for me.
There's possibly 3 issues here we're dealing with.
Okay.
First issue is, how do we proceed? Do we proceed that 2/3 of the property owners abutting the lake are forcing us to do something? Or do we proceed that because of that number of people, we are going to act on our own motion? I do realize that a year and a half ago, we announced we had no interest in changing the lake levels. At that time, this information was not before us, nor was the number of people supporting changing the lake level before us. So that's another thing that has to be weighed. Before I would vote to change any level in any form, I would demand an engineering study that shows at what level are we flooding people and at what level are we safe. And I would want that in writing, that we would not exceed an engineer's recommendation as to what we start flooding people.
I support that totally.
That's a given. That has to go with whatever direction we go.
And I'm not trying to shut you down, but I think Ms. Hissong commented on that. She recommended that.
But I would like to see it in writing that we are
Sure.
not going to, because this board can change in this whole process.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to instigate something that I may start flooding people. I can justify the lake is low because we didn't have water. I cannot justify flooding properties. I don't want this board to get into a situation where we are going to flood properties. Do I think the lake level can be amended some, or even a temporary for banking water be done of 3 inches without a problem? I believe so, but I need an engineering firm to tell me so. It's just, I just stand there and look at the lake and say that. We need statistics to show that. My recommendation would be, if we move forward with this, to petition the courts to do something, and we go for a temporary order to bank water before we ask for that number. We have an engineering firm do a elevation on 100 sites in the lake and the flooding prone areas. That would give us a good representation of what's going to happen. Before we go to a final order of changing the lake level, we may require more elevation tests.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I agree. I think we need to do something like that exactly, but I've been monitoring the Higgins and Houghton and Lake St. Helen for the last 7-8 years. And there have been many times when the levels on Houghton Lake were 12 inches, 14 inches, 9 inches above legal level. That floods a lot of people and that creates a lot of havoc. And before we move forward with that, we need to make sure that we're not going to have, we need the structure in place that isn't going to allow that to happen during the summer or the early spring, early summer, high water stage when we all experience that. Like I said, I feel these people's pain. We've been going through it on Higgins Lake for years. We haven't been able to get this commission to do anything. We need to just really be careful. And like Rex said, we probably need to get an engineering firm to make sure everything is going to check out. The 6 to 8 inches if you start out at 6 to 8 inches high and you get a rainy season, you jump and it jumps up to 12, 14. That creates a problem for a lot of people on the lake on Houghton and flooding. So we have to be really careful how we proceed in this. Otherwise, we're going to end up getting sued again.
I agree that the prior resolution from 2019 does need to be repealed. That I do agree with. But I also
motion on that, or how does that proceed? Do we make a motion on just repealing that today, or what?
No, it'll go into a lake meeting.
Okay, which is next week.
Correct.
Okay.
I also agree with Commissioner Wolfson as far as having an engineering tell us none of us are experts up here. We have no idea what that level is of flooding, not flooding people. And that is what the engineering firm needs to be able to tell us. And they also need to be able to tell us with our current structure, what is able to be done with that current structure in place and where that level should be. And I think I think those things have to be done. As far as the 2/3, we have to decide as a board, and that will have to come in our next meeting. As a board, how do we require going through all 2/3, or do we take the 2/3, the petition that was given to us, and on our own motion move forward? And that's a decision that's going to have to be made by each of us.
And Madam Chair, I'm in favor of moving with the 2/3 that we have already. I feel very comfortable.
2/3. I'm assuming it is.
I'm assuming we'll check more into it, but I believe that we will find out the 2/3 are accurate by the gentleman who petitioned the court.
And I do believe in the work session that the prosecutor is going to be giving his opinion on that. We have asked him to do that at our next meeting, and I do believe that we are going to have, if he's not here, there will be a written opinion on that.
But I just don't want to get the board in a position where we just say, yeah, it's 2/3, and then we get sued because we didn't do our due diligence. That's what I'm concerned with. Because that could happen and we'd end up in another lesson. Because I know there's some folks down on Houghton Lake that don't want that lake level change. And I can almost guarantee you that if we don't do our due diligence, we're going to be in a jam.
I feel very comfortable, Madam Chair, that this board will do its due diligence. Very comfortable with that.
I do too. Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think that's what the attorney is recommending, that we do not move forward based solely on 2/3 of the people petitioning. We move forward. That's overwhelming evidence that we should do something and then move forward on our own. I believe that's what the attorney's opinion is. Is that correct, Stacy?
Yes.
More or less?
Yes, because I agree with Commissioner Ostergren that the last thing you want to have happen is if it's just solely on the petition that there's litigation on the petitioners. I've been involved in litigation counting petitioners like that, and as a result, in our firm, every petition that we get like this, we say also on their own motion to avoid that type of costs coming into play. And so that would be my recommendation. And again, remember the petition asks for some very specific items that the engineering may not call into question. It's my opinion that the court nor the county should be held to the specifics of the petition language. But again, that could be a point of potential litigation that by having it on, after receiving public support by receiving a petition, its own motion also takes away that argument.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had actually more than 2/3.
During public comment, you can come up and, okay. We're back to public comment, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we have public comment. Before the public comes up and comment, I do want to remind everyone that this is public comment. We don't answer questions. If you would like a question answered, please either email that question to the board, and we can either answer it through email, phone, or we can answer it in the next meeting under unfinished business. That opens us up to public comment. Yes. You have to come up and state your name.
And Danny Miller.
I'd like the record to show that we actually, I believe, had more than the required 2/3, because I heard 2/3 tossed around a lot, and then one gentleman said that we didn't even have 2/3. But I believe the efforts and the constituency for this lake really need to be considered seriously.
Thanks. Any other? Yes, come on up. State your name.
Name's Dave Bisbee on Trail Drive. I have a couple concerns. As the previous commenter said, he believes there's over 2/3. Can't state or even believe that until they're certified. And if there's a husband and wife both on the deed, both signatures have to be on that petition. Otherwise, it's not a valid processed petition. Second of all, they only went through and petitioned the lakefront people, not the SAD zone that has, we got 75 miles of channels? A lot of frontage on those channels. And this lake level issue affects everybody, not just the few people who want more water for recreation. So these are a couple of my concerns, and I hope you take them into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Come on up. State your name.
Joanne Prater. I live on East Houghton Lake. And with being a lay person on this situation here, the $150 or the money that we were all paying, I know I have neighbors that don't understand where this money actually was going to. And then, I mean, I even explained that it's for the next 3 years. Each place is different amount. And the older people, they don't know, okay, I paid this, I'm getting, one person's telling me it's to fix the dam. Another person's telling me that it's to get a company to come and check it out and give us the amount, how much it's going to cost. It's never been actually, or if it has, a lot of people have not received this kind of information. So I'm just asking if there's any way that you could explain this in lay terms, where this money that you're collecting for the special assessment is going to.
Thanks.
Thank you. Come on up.
Kurt Copel, I live on McKinley Canals, and as a canal owner, my wife and I did receive a petition. So I would, as far as I know, I believe that and petitions were sent out to canal owners. At previous meetings, the lawyer had stated what the money was going to, the $150 for residential, depending if you're on the lake or canal. I hear your pain, is trying to go through, trying to protect yourselves legally from all this. I mean, it's a very complicated situation. But at the same part, here we have all these owners of lakes, on the lake, on the canal, and, trying to balance your decision and, don't want to get sued again. I think to protect yourselves, you probably do have to have that lake level that Rex wants to do. I think that's a very good idea, just to see where that's at and not have possibility of flooding. It also, how do you balance everything in the past years, how many that we've been banking, I think that, for the time being, I think that you could pass a interim proposal to raise the lake level 3 inches to give us some type of not restitution, but to help us, and then I think, it's also, it should be a highly important decision, a priority, to help us as owners in the Houghton Lake community trying to resolve this issue. The water is definitely very low, and just, you see how many people are here today. We have more than it sounds like we have more than 2/3 vote, of the people, for a resolution, for a petition to raise that lake level. And I think there's some different options, but I think definitely trying to raise it 3 inches would not be an issue. It sounds like you have the power to make a decision right away, and then I'll go ahead with that engineer to get that report, but 3 inches should not be an issue. I think that would be in good faith from the board to us, to showing that you're moving forward, showing that you understand how much pain that we have here on Houghton Lake. And I think that would be something, in good faith, that to try and compromise this situation for all of us to take care of.
Thank you. Come on up.
Craig Houghton, Old Trail Drive. I keep hearing people in the audience saying about the pain and suffering they have their boats. They can't get their boats off their lifts. I live on Houghton Lake as well. I live on property that's frequently flooded, water coming over the seawalls. I've documented some of the facts and given it to the board, the frequency at which the lake floods. We have a floodplain elevation, I think, of 1139.6. And on my land, we're frequently there. Houghton Lake is the second shallowest large lake in Michigan. I don't know how you're going to raise the lake level without flooding people's property. A long history of it, you got, 40, 50 years of data. The numbers are there. It shows the flooding. If you add in the wind-driven tides, the Seiche effect, another 6, 8 inches, most people are at flood stage. It's just that simple. You have a floodplain elevation that I would expect we reach every 3 to 5 years. It's a 100-year floodplain elevation, and we reach it every 3 to 5 years. What you're attempting to do is going to be very expensive for those people that are trying to protect their land from floods. I'm against any use of special assessment funds by this board to proceed. I don't know where you're going to get your money, if you're going to use special assessment funds or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public? Yes, come on up.
Good morning, Mike Serpenat, 1145 Long Point, full-time resident, Houghton Lake. I look around, I see the cameras, I see these recording devices. A number of people near my neighborhood where I live are not full-time residents of Houghton Lake. And I find myself in a position frequently where they're coming to me and asking me, well, what happened in the meeting? What happened in the meeting? Can you help me understand, where we're at, where we're going, what's going to happen in this lake level? My interpretation is just my opinion of it, and it's probably not the best thing for these people to always hear directly from me. It's nice that I try to do and provide some help, but I do have my own opinions on it. My request is if there's a method or a methodology through either a fully written documentation of all the discussion today that's been taken place, be recorded and posted on the webpage, or better yet, if this is a video review of it, that you make this available to the general public on the Roscommon County webpage so that people can look at it themselves.
It is.
And come to their own.
It is. It's been there for years. Just got to go to the website and click on it.
That's the case. I'll swear I'll send them.
There you go. Never mind. Rosanna Danner, right?
As long as he gets the job done, that's all I care about.
There you go. Yeah, it's on the website. We're not on C-SPAN or anything, but it's almost as good as on YouTube.
I'm Terry Michaels, Boston Avenue and Houghton Lake. Sir, with all due respect, I don't think you can feel our pain. Higgins Lake is a much deeper lake than Houghton Lake, and a few inches on Houghton Lake means a whole lot more than a few inches on Higgins Lake. My other comment is we can't build rules, processes, and legislation around corner cases. The lots that are flooding are usually the same ones that flood when it rains heavy, and in the spring when there's a thaw. Those lots were low when they were purchased, and that's an investment risk that somebody takes when they buy such a property. The fact that it's always been low isn't going to change. Our lake level has been the same for approximately 40 years with some variations based on different years, different seasons. We all know that, but we've lived with it the way that we have. And, for somebody to now suggest that, the law was changed 2 years ago and should stay that way because of their own personal interest, sounds to me like very self-serving and not very neighborly. They're corner cases. They're not the majority. They're not even a significant minority. And I think we need to take that into consideration, that we can't solve for every eventuality. Charles Kettering once said that if every possible objection must be overcome, nothing significant can ever be accomplished. And that's true in this case. We can't allow corner cases to dictate how the commission moves. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, come on up. State your name.
Linnell Mace. And again, I'm going to go back to my days. I lived on a farm, all kinds of stuff in Colorado. If you need a new head gate, fix the damn thing. I don't know why it hasn't been fixed or oriented. If you need to let water in and out, and I know this is a big lake, I got that. But I know there's a problem with the head gate that needs to be fixed. I don't know how long you have to think about that. We're losing a town, we're losing people, we're losing money. Everything's going to hell in a basket. Fix the head gate. And you don't really have to worry about whether you're banking or where it's going to come from. You all get lots and lots of water in Michigan. You should be grateful for that. But fix the head gate, and that will let water in and out, and I think that will take care of a lot of the stuff.
I hope I'm not right, but there you go.
Any other public comment? Yes, come on up.
Hi, Hamster Brother. I just want to say that I was very pleased to hear what the attorney had to say. I was also pleased to hear that the majority of the board seemed to initially agree with what she has to say. I like that the solution is fast and quick and hopefully will provide some relief for the upcoming summer in 2020.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I know.
Dustin Trzynski, Houghton Lake again. I'm the one that helped generate the list for the petition. So I know some discussion on whether it's going to be valid or what's 2/3 and who's this and different names on the petition. I just want to give you guys a little bit of comfort level, knowing that this could possibly be challenged or whatever reason. We meticulously, we started off using the SAD list of addresses for our record and meticulously spent hundreds of hours going around each property using the SAD map and verifying names and addresses of every single property, owners. Not every property is a husband and wife. There's properties with there's 8 people on some properties who ran across. So purposely spent tons of time generating all that information before we even mailed out the petition because we wanted to make sure that we don't do all this hard work for nothing. So then after we mail it out and validated all the addresses, who qualified, who didn't, or who should get a petition, who shouldn't, we meticulously went through every petition that came in, looked up the property information, verified what name is on the title, on our public records, on the Roscommon County Deeds, verified every person that signed that petition was on that petition or had a signature on that petition that's name is on the title. Every single property was personally validated. If it wasn't, we didn't have, say, 3 people are on a deed, we only got 3. That number was not counted in our record. There's a lot of people that turned in petitions that didn't have all the names of the people on their property. We did not even count those people because we wanted to make sure when it got to you, there's no way, nothing on this thing could be challenged. Then once we met the 2/3 number, I forget the exact numbers, we wanted to make sure we went above and beyond that. And I think we were up 150 people on top of that number is how many, we finalized out. I just want to give you guys a little bit of information because I know there's talk of, I just want you guys to be comfortable. There was a lot of work and a lot done to make sure when it got to you guys that this is, you're getting 2/3 of the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. With no further public comment, this meeting would be adjourned.